In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the pricing comparison between Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS for similar type of scenarios with same type of IT resources in both platforms. So I will open pricing calculator in both AWS and Microsoft Azure environment. For AWS, you go to calculator.aws to get the pricing calculator. And in Microsoft Azure, you go to azure.microsoft.com/pricing/calculator. So this is the pricing calculator for Microsoft Azure, and this is the pricing calculator for AWS. I will start with AWS. So I select Create Estimate. And then I will add virtual machines, which is EC2 instance. So I select Amazon EC2 and go to configure. Now for the detailed configuration, I will choose US West region. And then for the operating system, I will choose Windows Server. Now for virtual CPUs, I will use 4 virtual CPU and 16 GB of RAM. So this instance is actually a T3A extra large instance. And then I will use 2 of these virtual machines. So I select quantity as 2. Now for pricing strategy, I will choose 1 year pricing and no upfront payment. Then for the internal storage, which is the hard drive, I will choose SSD. And for the storage amount, I will choose 32 GB of storage. So I selected an EC2 instance with Windows Server operating system, 4 processor, 16 GB of memory, 32 GB of SSD hard drive space, and 2 of these instances. So I select Add to my estimate. Next, I'm going to add another virtual machine. So I go to Add Service and then select Amazon EC2 and configure. I select in the same region, which is US West, and for the operating system, I choose Linux. I'm gonna use 2 virtual CPUs and 8 GB of RAM. So this instance is a T3A large instance. I will use 2 of these virtual machines, so I change the quantity to 2. Again, 1 year reservation and no upfront payment. Then for the internal storage or hard drive, I choose general purpose SSD and the storage amount is 32 GB. So I add to my estimate. Next, I'm going to add a SQL database. So I go to Add Service. Now I can look for the database, or I can simply search database. That gives me all the available database options. There is no Microsoft SQL database in Amazon AWS. There is MySQL in Amazon AWS, as well as there is MySQL in Microsoft Azure. So for comparison purpose, I will select MySQL in both cases. So I go to Amazon RDS, Relational Database Service for MySQL, and configure it. Now the region is US West again. And for instance type, There are 48 virtual CPUs and 192 gigabyte of memory. I don't want this large configuration, so I'm going to look for something like 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigabyte of RAM. So I go to instance type and select other options. It doesn't show directly the configuration, so I'm going to try some of them. First I will try micro instance and see what its configuration. It's 2 virtual CPUs and 1 gigabyte of memory. So I will choose another one, a little bit larger than micro. So I go medium, and the medium has 2 virtual CPUs and 4 gigabyte of memory. I want 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigabyte, so larger than medium. So I select large, and that gives me 2 virtual CPU and 8 gigabyte of memory. So I'm going to take that one. And 1 year reservation, no upfront payment, and a standard reserved instance. And for the storage, I'm going to choose SSD and 32 gigabyte of storage. Now the backup option, I'm not going to select any backup option at this moment, but in production environment you should consider adding backup options. So I go to add to my estimate. Next I'm going to add a load balancer. So I select add service and search for load balancer. In Amazon it's called Elastic Load Balancer. So I go to configure. There are different options: application load balancer, network load balancer, and classic load balancer. Because I am using EC2 instances and I want load balancing between EC2 instances, so I select classic load balancer. I will use 1 load balancer, so number of load balancer is 1. Now I'm going to use 1 terabyte of data processing per month, so I select 1 terabyte per month. Add to my estimate. The last thing I'm going to add is a Cloud DNS. So I go to add service and then search for DNS. In Amazon AWS it's called Route 53. So I go to configure. I'm going to use 1 zone. So I select hosted zone as 1. And for standard queries, I'm going to select 5 million queries per month. And I leave everything else as default. So I add to my estimate. To recap, what I'm using is 1 DNS, which is called Route 53 in Amazon AWS, 1 Elastic Load Balancer, 1 MySQL database, 2 Linux EC2 instances, and 2 Windows EC2 instances. Now at the top it's showing me the total monthly cost as well as 1 year cost. You can see that the total monthly cost for this scenario became $538 US per month. Now if I want to change any of this configuration, I can go to the respective resource and edit it. Okay, next I'm going to create similar type of instance in Microsoft Azure environment. So I go to Microsoft Azure pricing calculator. I will add virtual machines first. So virtual machines have been added. So I can go to saved estimates and then look at the configuration detail. The region is US West and the operating system is Windows. And the instance CPU and RAM configuration, I'm going to select 4 virtual CPU and 16 GB of RAM. The name of this instance is B4MS. Now you can also see that there are 32 GB of temporary storage. This temporary storage is basically the paging space that an operating system uses for better performance. In AWS, we don't have this configuration option, so I will ignore this 32 GB of temporary storage configuration, but I will focus on 4 virtual CPU and 16 GB of RAM. For billing option, I will go for 1 year reserved, and I will use 2 of these virtual machines. Now for internal storage or hard drive, I will select the standard SSD type of hard drive and 32 GB as the size of the hard drive. I will use one of these hard drive. Alright, I keep everything else as default. Next, I go to the top, go to the product and add virtual machines. I select view to configure the detail. So this is the second type of virtual machine. The region is US West again, but I'm gonna choose the Linux operating system. And for the type of Linux, I will leave the default as Ubuntu. Now for the CPU and RAM configuration, for Ubuntu, I will select 2 virtual CPU and 8 GB of RAM. And I can ignore the temporary storage, which is the paging option. Now for billing, I will choose 1 year reserved, and I will choose 2 of these virtual machines. For each of these virtual machines, I will select SSD type of storage and 32 GB of storage. I will select 1 disk per virtual machine. So that has been added. Next, I'm going to add database. So I will select database. But as you can see, here you have Azure SQL database, which is Microsoft database. I used MySQL database in AWS, so I'm going to look for MySQL database. So I go to database category, and now it shows all the options, and I'm going to select MySQL database. So a MySQL database item has been added. Let's look at the detailed configuration. So I go to the saved estimates and look for the database that I added. Here is MySQL database. For the region, I select US West. For the compute part, I'm going to use 2 virtual CPUs. Again, it's a 1 year reserve term, and I'm going to use 1 of these database servers. For the storage, I'm going to use 32 GB of storage. I will not take any backup for now, so I'm going to remove the added backup. So the database has been configured. Next, I'm going to add a load balancer. So I go to the products and search for load balancer. There is a load balancer. Go to its configuration. The region is US West, and for the type, I'm going to change this to a standard. I will go with 5 load balancer rules. And for data processing, I'm going to select 1 terabyte per month. So change to unit as terabyte and 1. So the load balancer has been added. Next, I'm gonna add a DNS. So I search for DNS and select Azure DNS and go to its configuration. For the region, I choose US West. And I will host one DNS zone and 5 million queries. In total, it's showing me $443 per month. In AWS environment, it was a little bit different. Let's take a look at the detail. So for Route 53, which is the DNS, we have one hosted zone. And if you look at the number of queries, it's 5 million queries per month. So I go back, and for pricing comparison between these two, $2.5 in AWS, and here we have $2.5 in Azure. The next item is load balancer, $23 per month in Azure, and in AWS it's $28 per month. So the next item is SQL database. In AWS, I'm choosing MySQL, and the monthly cost is $97 per month. In Microsoft Azure, MySQL cost is $103 per month. Now let's take a look at the virtual machine instances. This is the Linux instance. If I go into detail, so the pricing is $103 USD per month, and in Azure $118 USD per month. Now for the last item, it is a Windows virtual machine in AWS. So this is the Windows instance. Let's look at detail. Here you have $306 per month for this instance in AWS. Now here we have $195 per month for this Windows instance. Now the Windows operating system is not free because it's Microsoft product. Microsoft Azure is giving it as a better price, $195 per month for the same instance. AWS charging $306 per month. So in summary, we can see that for the same type of configuration, we have $443 per month in Microsoft Azure environment, and in AWS we have $538 per month for similar type of configuration. And that is the end of this demo. I hope you found this video helpful. If you would like to receive notifications on future videos, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel and set up notification by tapping on the bell. Thank you for watching.